Cheesy the Podcast, presented by Just Cheesy Productions.
Hi there, I'm your host Fondue.
This is Cheesy.
This week's episode is part 1, where we learn all about the Roman Empire and cheese.
Ooh.
We're going to hear about emperors, poets,
Wow.
writers,
Ooh.
philosophers, and landowners.
Whoa.
We're going to talk about cheese graters and a bank that accepts cheese as collateral.
Whoa.
And of course, no episode would be complete without our very cheesy joke.
I love a joke.
Stay tuned for episode 152, Roman, on Just Cheesy the Podcast. You know, Cheesy, I think we can definitively say that cheese is our Roman Empire.
Oh, yeah.
And that got me to wondering what cheese's role was in the actual Roman Empire.
Yeah.
As we know, cheese has been around for thousands of years.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, Rome gets credited for basically giving us the cheese as we know it today.
Whoa.
According to thenibble.com.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
According to thenibble.com, Roman culture developed the art of cheese making as we know it.
Whoa.
They said that cheesemakers were skilled artisans,
Oh.
and their culture developed many varieties of cheese.
Wow.
And some of those are still around today.
They are?
They're credited with being the first to age cheese and to store it.
Okay.
And they even had lots of ripening techniques.
Whoa.
And according to this article, larger Roman houses actually had a separate cheese kitchen.
Holy cow.
According to RomanArmy.net, the soldiers from the Roman army knew the process of cheese making very well.
Whoa.
They knew that the animals with more than 4 nipples, like dogs or pigs, were unsuitable for making milk.
Whoa.
And it says here that they had a way to make cheese that was unknown to a lot of local farmers because they made their cheese with rennet,
Whoa.
or coagulum as they called it.
Whoa.
They also knew how to use the juice of a fig tree as rennet.
Wow.
The nibble.com is going pretty far back.
Nibble.
We're talking Homer, around 1184 BCE.
Holy cow.
It's hard to imagine that talk about cheese goes back that far.
Yeah.
But Homer mentions cheese being made in the caves of Greece from sheep and goat milk.
Whoa.
He refers to a type called synthos, which may have actually been an early version of feta.
Ooh.
Then we have Aristotle,
Whoa.
who lived around 384 to 322 BCE.
Whoa.
He talked about mare.
You mean horse?
Yeah, horse.
Yeah.
Mare and donkey milk.
Donkey.
And it was similar to modern day, I might mess this one up,
Oh, no.
kumis, a fermented mare's milk drink that contains 3% alcohol.
Whoa.
Around 160 BC, we talk about Marcus Porcius Cato,
Whoa.
a Roman statesman and landowner. And he authored a book called De Agricultura.
Okay.
And it's the oldest surviving book of Latin prose.
Whoa.
This book actually includes the first recorded ever cheesecake recipes.
Whoa.
I just can't believe they were eating cheesecake all the way back then.
Right?
His recipe for something called placenta
Okay.
was a baked cheesecake,
Ooh.
and it was likely derived from Greek origins.
Ooh.
It wasn't just a culinary delight,
Really?
but it was used in sacrificial offerings to the gods.
Whoa.
In Cato's book, there were also other cheese-baked cakes,
Ooh.
one called libum.
Libum?
According to an article in thepastisaforeignpantry.com,
Ooh.
it says here most of the cakes of that time didn't have sweeteners in the dough.
Okay.
But they said it didn't stop people from serving them drowned in honey or pomegranate syrup.
Whoa.
Libum cake is typically flour, egg, and ricotta.
Okay.
They say you break up the ricotta in a large bowl into a rough paste.
Okay.
You add the flour and egg to the ricotta and you combine.
Ooh.
You grease a round cake pan with olive oil and you make a bed of bay leaves in the bottom.
Whoa.
Cook it like a normal cake.
Okay.
And then you add some pine nuts and then you heat some honey and put that on the top.
Yum.
Actually sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it does.
We talk about Varro in 127 BCE.
Okay.
He highlighted the differences between cheeses from various regions and their
Ooh.
digestibility.
Whoa.
He also talked about the use of rennet becoming common.
Really?
There's a lot of really good information in a book called The Oxford Companion to Cheese.
Nice.
There's a link in our show notes
Wow.
where you can purchase it from Amazon. Amazon is not a sponsor,
Nope.
but if it was, the ad would go right here. Have you ever wanted to listen to the web?
Yeah.
Well, Newsly makes that possible.
They do?
They're an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android.
Super app.
You can listen to trending articles on the web on topics that you choose and get them read to you in a natural human voice.
What kind of topics?
Sports,
Cheese?
tech, business, science.
Cheese?
I'm sure there's even cheese.
Yay!
They even have an entire section for podcasts.
Are we there?
Of course we are.
Ooh.
It's one of my new favorite podcast apps. They even have digital radio.
Holy cow.
Just go to www.newsly.me to download it free.
Whoa.
Or use the link in the description. If you use the promo code CHEESY, that'll get you 1 month free premium subscription.
Yay, Newsly.
Now, back to the podcast. The Oxford Companion to Cheese talks about the 1st century BC.
Whoa.
There's a book called De Re Rustica
No.
by Columella. Hopefully that's right.
No way.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you should be.
Columella emphasizes the importance of timely cheese making.
Whoa.
They talk about really remote regions and how difficult it is to get milk to the market.
Whoa.
And he advises that cheeses with a thinner consistency have to be sold quickly so they can preserve their moisture.
Oh.
And the thicker cheeses can be stored for longer.
Whoa.
He talks about using rennet to curdle cheese.
Okay.
And we also hear about fig again.
Wow.
He says there are alternatives to rennet like thistle or fig tree sap, and that can also be used to curdle the cheese.
Whoa.
The famous Roman poet Virgil lived around 70 to 19 BC,
Whoa.
and he actually wrote about cheese making in his works Georgics.
Wow.
He talked about mountain shepherds using milk to make cheese.
Really?
And they sold their cheese at nearby markets.
Wow.
Virgil gives us a look into how cheese was a staple food, and it was produced by local farmers and deeply tied to the agricultural practices of the time.
Wow.
There's a famous emperor that loved cheese.
Really?
His name was Romain Antonin Le Pew.
Oh, boy.
They say he's also called Antonius Pius,
Okay.
who, according to a legend, he ate so much of the cheese that he feared he would die from overconsumption.
Whoa.
This cheese is made from goat milk. It's
Ooh.
wrapped in chestnut leaves,
Oh.
and it has an earthy flavor.
Yum.
In the 2nd century, we talk about Romano.
Really?
It's a salted sheep's milk cheese.
Oh, yeah.
And some people actually apply something called a capitura nero,
A what?
a thin black coating originally made of ochre, grapeseed oil, and charcoal.
Ooh.
And apparently this coating prevented the cheese from drying out as it matured.
Wow.
Production of Pecorino Romano has its roots in the province of Lazio.
Okay.
But they say the cheese is now mainly produced in Sardinia and Tuscany.
Ooh.
And they said that since Pecorino Romano doesn't spoil, the Roman army of antiquity carried it in their pockets as a snack as they marched over long distances.
Ooh, pocket cheese.
Around the year 300, Roman cheese was a significant export along the Mediterranean.
Really?
It's around this time that the Romans get credited from using smoke from applewood to smoke their cheeses.
Whoa.
The cheese was stamped and sold as La Luna, and it might have even been a precursor to Parmigiano Romano.
Ooh.
They say a lot of the cheeses spread throughout Europe when the retired Roman soldiers shared their expertise in farming colonies across Europe.
Wow.
We even see by the year 1000, cheese from the Asiago Plateau was well known.
Really?
And during the feudal period, tenants were required to pay duty and rent
Duty?
in cheese.
They did?
Did you know that Romans even used cheese graters?
Really?
They go back at least as far as Homer.
Holy cow.
In the Iliad, goat cheese is grated into wine as a practice known as Nestor's cup.
Ooh.
The cheese graters made their way to Italy, where bronze graters were found in aristocratic tombs.
Holy cow.
And by the time of the Roman Empire, they had become standard kitchen utensils.
Wow.
It's time for my favorite segment.
This week in cheese.
According to jacarandafm.com, there's an article that talks about a regional bank in Italy.
Whoa.
It's called the Credito Emiliano.
Okay.
And it has been accepting a lot of different kinds of collateral for small business loans.
Really?
Since 1953, this bank has been known to take giant wheels of Parmigiano Reggiano as collateral.
Whoa.
They say that the cheeses are actually known to cure for a long period of time, and they're priced according to their curing time.
Right?
So they're very valuable to dairy farmers.
Ooh.
They cite a Forbes article from 2015 that says besides holding the cheese as insurance, the bank stored the cheese wheels in a climate-controlled vault for the duration of the loan.
Whoa.
They said that way the farmers actually save on operating costs.
Holy cow.
And the bank gains some expertise about a risky industry.
Whoa.
An 80-pound wheel of cheese is roughly between $900 and $1,500.
Holy cow.
The article also goes on to say it takes some maturity to work with a bank like this.
I'm ready for a joke, Fondue.
Okay, what is a Roman emperor's favorite dish?
I don't know.
Caesar salad.
Oh.
Get it? Caesar salad?
Huh, that was timely.
Oh, yeah, that was really timely and a little bit cheesy. Thanks for listening to episode 152, Roman.
Thank you.
Part 1 of our Roman Empire series. We hope you join us next week to hear about part 2, where we talk about caves, recipes, and McDonald's.
And stay cheesy, everybody.